your discs cannot slip. They never have, they never will. It's not like you're ever just gonna bend forwards and then all of a sudden, whoop, your disc has slipped outside your spinal column. Hey guys, it's Alex here from HEXA Health Hub, and today I'm going to be showing you how to go through an initial assessment and then the early stage rehab exercise that we're going to be doing if your lower back pain is caused by a disc injury. Now, typically with your lower back, if you have a disc injury, going into a forward flexion bend position is going to be the most provocative, because if I bend forwards, then my disc will start to bulge out to the back and put pressure on sensitive structures in your back, such as your nerves. Now, I want to start off by saying your discs cannot slip. They never have, they never will. It's not like you're ever just gonna bend forwards and then all of a sudden, whoop, your disc has slipped outside your spinal column. It doesn't happen. What you can do is bulge them, where your disc will sort of balloon out to one side because too much pressure has been placed on the other side. Almost like as if you have a marshmallow in between two Jats crackers. If you push too hard on one side of the Jats crackers together, the marshmallow will start to balloon or bulge out to the back. The same thing can sometimes happen to the disc within your spine. The first initial assessment that we do for people is to see what movement is most provocative, and we want to see if that forward flexion bend is most provocative. So we get people to stand, gently roll from your head, your shoulders, and then reaching down to the ground. Typically you find people only start to get to that first little bit of bending through their lower back before they start getting their pain. That's only the first sign that it's a disc. It's not definitive yet. What will be definitive is the next thing that we do. What we want to do is get into a repeated extension movement. Hands on the hips, extending backwards and back up tall, extending backwards and back up tall. We're going to do 10 repeated extensions as far as the person can manage, ideally trying to get a little bit further and a little bit further every time. What's going to happen then, if there is a disc bulge that's pushing out to the back of the lower back, doing these repeated extensions is going to essentially push that bulge back into the middle of the spinal column. So it's like you've been pressing on the front of those Jats crackers, so the marshmallow is pushed out to the back. Now what we're going to be doing is going the other direction, pushing on the back of the Jats crackers to try and get that bulge of the marshmallow to sit back into the center. What you find is if your back pain is caused by a lumbar spine disc bulge, and then you've done 10 of these repeated extensions and you go into this forward bend again, either you'll have decreased pain or you will have an increased range of movement into that forward bend position. This is a positive test. It means that you are highly likely to have a disc bulge in your lower back. The next thing that we want to do is the first initial exercise to start decreasing that pain and make sure that you're doing the best thing that possible for your lumbar spine disc. And I'll show you over here. What you want to do is find a wall that ideally has some sort of features on it so you can start to measure how far down the wall, and this is very, very important. You then want to mark about 2 meters out from the wall. So I've got these gym tiles here, that's my 2 meter mark. You want to put a mark on the floor. You want to first start by testing with the first extension movement, how far down the wall you are able to see. So you put your hands on your hips, look backwards, and when you first start, put a mark on the wall. So at the moment, I can see to this point on the logo on the wall. What you then need to do is repeated extensions over and over and over again until you get to a point that you're looking down, and after doing 10, after being at this position that you can see on the wall, nothing's changing. That determines that you are now at your end or your normal maximum extension range position, because you've started to push those contents of your disc back to the center. If you think you've got a bulge out of your disc and you're trying to lean backwards initially, it's blocking your movement because there's something physically in the way stopping smooth movement. If you do it repetitively over and over and over, you're gently starting to push those contents back into the middle, and you'll start to be able to extend further and further, which will help you look further down. So I'll speed it up in the video so you don't have to wait around, but it essentially looks like this. Hands on your hips. Okay, now because I don't have an injury or any issues with my lumbar spine discs, I can get to my end range of movement fairly quickly. So when I first started, I could see about the middle of the logo area. After about 3-4 of those repetitions, I started getting a bit further and further. After the 5th one, I could already look down below the logo just from standing 2 meters out from the wall. After that, it didn't really change. So that's letting me know that there, when my disc is healthy and sitting in the center of my spinal column, that's my end range positioning. Now, what you need to do, if you're someone that does have a disc injury or a disc bulge, it might take you It might take you more than the 10 repeated extension movements to get to that end range. It might take you 20, 25, 30. You know, it can take you a lot more repetitions to get to that end range. But once you've found it, put a little mark on the wall. Then what your exercise is going to be is you find your mark on the floor. First thing when you wake up in the morning, look back and, oh, I can't see it. I can only see up to here. So you know that you need to keep extending until you can find your own marker on the wall again, so that your disc is sitting back into that central spot in your spinal column and you're back at your maximum range of movement. Okay, that's going to settle down your pain because you're doing the best thing that you can for your disc and keeping it centralized, rather than continuously doing movements that's going to aid at bulging out into the back in that initial rehab and recovery phase. This is an exercise that you can do all throughout the day. Those repeated extensions, find a spot on the floor, find your point on the wall, that's your starting point and then your end point, and keep extending until you can make it to that end point. After you've done that, you don't need to do any more. You can go about your business throughout your day. Halfway through the day, maybe test it again, go to the wall, lean backwards, see where you are. You might find you're maybe not all the way up the top like you were at the start of the day, you might only be halfway. And you might find then that it'll only take you 10 extensions to get to that end range of movement, rather than doing 20 like what it maybe was at the start of the day. Now, bear in mind, this is only initial rehab exercise. This doesn't fix the injury completely. It doesn't stop it from coming back. What does stop injuries like this from returning in the future is going and seeing a health professional like a physiotherapist to assess your movement patterns. It's imperative. I cannot stress that enough. It is so important that you have someone assessing and looking at your movement to see what's caused you to get the disc bulge in the first place, where you're weaker, where you're stronger, how you go bending, how you go lifting. All of those things are really, really important to making sure that you are looking after your spine and keeping it as healthy as possible for a longer period of time. If you have any more questions about that stuff, guys, feel free to send me a message and I'd be happy to help you out.